Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and an honour to be here with you today. I'm also delighted to announce that my new book has just been shortlisted for the Financial Times Goldman Sachs Business Book of the Year Award. Unfortunately, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough competition to win, though, because Alan Greenspan's book has also been shortlisted. But I want to start by saying that I'm a big fan of Danish people, in particularly a hugely talented young Danish striker called Niklas Bendtner, who plays for Arsenal. Now, Arsenal were once famous for being a solidly reliable all-English team, and rival fans used to chant, "Boring, boring Arsenal," because we had a habit of grinding out 1-0 victories. We didn't mind too much, though, because at least we were winning. But in the early 90s, something changed. The insular Old English League became the newly globalised Premier League, and Arsenal found that its traditional ways could no longer compete with the likes of Manchester United. Now, it took Arsenal a long time to realise this, because when a winning formula has worked for years, people are naturally reluctant to change. But then suddenly, Arsenal surprised everybody by appointing as their manager not just a foreigner, but a Frenchman who had studied economics, looked like a university professor, and had previously been coaching in Japan, of all places. It seemed that the only thing going for him was his strangely appropriate name, Arsène Wenger. Now, within a few years, Arsenal's all-English squad had become a multinational team of all the talents, and a hugely successful one at that. In less than a decade, we won 3 Premiership titles, 4 FA Cups, and came within minutes of winning the Champions League. Now, some people might think that such a diverse team, made up of players from so many different countries, speaking so many different languages, and each with their own individual style of play, could never gel together as a team. But actually, it works. As Arsène Wenger explains, each person brings from his own culture the positive side, which all comes together in the service of efficiency. That is the beauty. It is almost magical. Now, it might be almost magical to look at, but there's nothing mysterious about the secret of Arsenal's success and that of many other teams like Liverpool, Real Madrid, or AC Milan that are now stuffed full of foreign talent too. If you want to be a world-beating team, you have to attract the world's best talent. If you stick with homegrown players while others search far and wide for new stars, you're going to fall behind. And while you may think that a team where everyone comes from a similar background will cohere as a unit more effectively, in fact, teams where different players learn from each other and try out new ways tend to perform much better. Now, that's a lesson which Arsenal has learnt, and it's a lesson which Denmark urgently needs to learn too. Now, I'm not denying that Denmark's economy has been remarkably successful in recent years, so much so that people who once spoke admiringly about the Swedish model now hold up Denmark as an example. But the world is changing, and Denmark needs to change with it. China alone now produces more university graduates each year than all of Europe put together. In fact, China produces 3 times more new graduates each year than the total number of graduates of all ages in Denmark. India too is churning out highly skilled workers. Back in 1990, there were only 20 million university graduates in the country. Now, there are 50 million. And that's just the start. Over the next 20 years, most of the new graduates in the world will come from emerging economies. So the question is, can Denmark really afford to keep its doors closed to all their many talents? And my answer is, I don't think so. I don't think Denmark can afford to be complacent in this fast-changing and ever more competitive global economy. Now, every European government is envious of the stunning success of Silicon Valley, but they generally seem incapable of taking the difficult decisions needed to foster a similar explosion of innovation and entrepreneurship. Despite all the lofty talk of making Europe the world's most competitive economy in 2010, it's clear that the Lisbon targets will not be met. But in any case, the Lisbon agenda is missing the most important point. Silicon Valley's incredible dynamism is not something that can be replicated with targets for this or targets for that. It's fueled by America's risk-loving venture capitalists, its entrepreneurial universities, and its go-getting business climate, with a vital catalyst that is often overlooked: the brightest sparks from around the world. So many of the big names that we associate with America's dominance of the new internet economy were actually co-founded by immigrants. Google, Yahoo, eBay, Intel, Oracle, Sun Microsystems. I could go on and on. In fact, nearly half of America's venture capital-funded startups were co-funded by immigrants. Perhaps even more surprisingly, Sergey Brin of Google, Jerry Yang of Yahoo, and Pierre Omidyar of eBay all arrived in the US not as highly skilled immigrants, but as children. Now ask yourself, is there any chance that a new Silicon Valley could spring up in Denmark as it is now? If even a huge and diverse economy like the US needed foreign brains to trigger its internet boom, could a small country of 5 million like-minded people realistically do so alone? And do you honestly believe that Denmark can afford to rest on its laurels and not try to foster a similar cluster of innovation and entrepreneurship? Let's face it, the old recipe for economic growth, more spending on education, extra investment in research and development, is not good enough anymore. If we already knew what we needed to do in order to develop tomorrow's technologies, they'd be yesterday's technologies. Now, millions of hours and millions of kroner can be spent trying to solve a problem without finding a solution. But add someone with a fresh pair of eyes and a different perspective, and suddenly you have an answer. Now, no matter how talented and well-equipped they may be, 5 million Danes cannot possibly know all the answers. Outsiders have a lot to offer too. Again, look at America. US universities attract the world's top graduate students in science and engineering. And studies show that an increase in the number of foreign students not only raises patents granted to universities, it also gives a big boost to patents granted to businesses, because foreign graduates who stay on in the US add to the productivity of the wider economy. As John Stuart Mill wisely remarked, it is hardly possible to overrate the value for the improvement of human beings, of things which bring them into contact with persons dissimilar to themselves, and with modes of thought and action unlike those with which they are familiar. There is no nation which does not need to borrow from others.